The Duke dominated Hollywood for 5 decades straight. When he walked on screen, even other legends stepped aside. One director called him more powerful than the studio system itself. Wayne turned down roles that won others Oscars and still became the biggest box office draw in history. These 13 films didn't just make his career, they completely transformed what it meant to be an American hero on screen. Stagecoach. John Ford gambled his entire reputation on a washed-up B-movie actor nobody wanted. Studio execs laughed when Ford insisted on casting Wayne as the Ringo Kid. They had already rejected him for 80 leading roles, but that iconic tracking shot, Wayne spinning his rifle with one hand, changed Hollywood forever. Critics called it the birth of the modern Western. The film cost about $500,000 to make and pulled in more than $1 million in its first run. Massive numbers for 1939. Wayne later admitted he was terrified during filming. "I'd blown every big chance I'd gotten. This was it." Ford knew better. He actually slapped Wayne before his first scene to get him angry. "Don't act, react!" he shouted. That tension you see on screen, completely real. Wayne studied that first scene 103 times after the film wrapped. "That's when I learned what screen acting was all about," he said years later. Ford and Wayne would make 14 more films together, but this is where the legend began. What most fans don't know is that Ford deliberately humiliated Wayne throughout production. He'd mock his posture, his voice, even the way he mounted a horse. It wasn't cruelty. It was calculated. Ford was stripping away years of B-movie mannerisms. The crew thought Ford had lost his mind casting a nobody in such a pivotal role. Wayne himself would wake up vomiting from anxiety. But when audiences first saw him step into frame, rifle twirling, something magical happened. People literally gasped. Orson Welles reportedly watched Stagecoach 40 times while preparing for Citizen Kane, studying how Ford moved the camera. The film was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, winning 2, and single-handedly revived the Western genre, which had been considered box office poison throughout the 1930s. Without this one perfect casting decision, there would be no John Wayne as we know him today. Red River. Howard Hawks handed Wayne the darkest role of his career, and Wayne delivered something nobody saw coming. He plays Thomas Dunson, a cattle rancher whose obsession with his herd turns him into a brutal tyrant. The trail drive scenes took 45 days to shoot, using 500 longhorn cattle and the largest crew ever assembled for a Western at that time. Critics were stunned. John Ford himself watched it and muttered, "I never knew the big son of a gun could act." What really shocked audiences was watching Wayne transform from hero to villain. The studio panicked. Certain fans would reject seeing the Duke as a monster. Instead, the film grossed $4.5 million on a $1.8 million budget. Montgomery Clift, who played Wayne's adopted son, was terrified of him off-screen. Wayne found out and deliberately intimidated him between takes, creating the perfect tension for their confrontation scene. Years later, Wayne admitted, "I was completely miscast. That's why it worked." The production itself was a nightmare. 3 crew members died during filming from heat exhaustion. The cattle stampede sequence injured 14 stuntmen. Wayne himself nearly drowned crossing a river when his horse panicked. Hawks pushed everyone to breaking point, filming in 110-degree Texas heat without modern conveniences. Wayne and Clift represented completely opposite acting styles. Wayne, the intuitive screen natural. Clift, the intense method actor. They despised each other's approaches. Clift would spend hours preparing for scenes. Wayne would show up, glance at the script, and nail it in one take. Their real-life tension became the perfect foundation for the film's central conflict. The film's original ending was completely different, much darker, with Wayne's character dying. Preview audiences hated it so much that Hawks shot a new finale over studio objections. When it premiered, critics immediately recognized it as the first psychological Western, a revolutionary approach that paved the way for films like The Searchers and Unforgiven decades later. Red River proved Wayne wasn't just a star. He was an actor capable of extraordinary depth and range. The Searchers. Wayne never won an Oscar for The Searchers, and that's the biggest joke in Hollywood history. As Ethan Edwards, a Civil War veteran hunting for his kidnapped niece, Wayne creates the most complex character ever seen in a Western. The film bombed with critics when it was released. They called it excessive and disturbing. Today, it's considered one of the greatest films ever made. Martin Scorsese said it defined the American experience. Ford shot it in Monument Valley, forcing the crew to endure 120-degree heat during the day and freezing temperatures at night. The famous doorway shots that open and close the film were accidents. Ford had to shelter from a dust storm and noticed how Wayne's silhouette looked against the light. The production went $1.5 million over budget, but the film eventually grossed over $8 million. Wayne later said this character scared him. Ethan Edwards was possessed. I didn't want to go home some nights after playing him. The film digs into America's racist foundation in ways that stunned 1956 audiences. Wayne's character doesn't just want to rescue his niece. He wants to kill her because she's been contaminated by living with Comanche. Ford doesn't flinch from showing this ugliness. The Duke plays a man consumed by hatred, and he never softens the portrayal. The production itself was brutal. Wayne suffered 3 broken ribs when a horse fell on him, but refused to delay shooting. Native American actors faced constant discrimination in the nearby town of Moab, being refused service at restaurants, even while in costume for the film. What's even more remarkable is how the film was initially dismissed. Variety called it overlong and criticized its excessive violence. It wasn't even mentioned at the Academy Awards. Only decades later did filmmakers like Spielberg, Lucas, and Scorsese champion it as perhaps the greatest American film ever made. Ford himself never explained the film's meanings. When asked about its powerful imagery, he growled, "I make westerns, not art pictures." But he knew exactly what he was doing. The Searchers remains the darkest, most morally complex Western ever made, with Wayne's performance standing as a towering achievement no other actor of his era could have delivered. True grit. After 40 years and more than 150 films, Wayne finally won his Oscar. As one-eyed Marshal Rooster Cogburn, Wayne basically played himself. Older, tougher, funnier, meaner. The studio wanted Marlon Brando for the role. Wayne told them, "I'm the one with true grit, not that mumbling pretty boy." During filming, Wayne was battling lung cancer, had a removed lung, and still insisted on doing his own stunts. The most incredible scene, where Cogburn charges 4 outlaws with the reins in his teeth and guns blazing, Wayne performed at age 61. Director Henry Hathaway tried to use a stunt double. Wayne's response? Duke Wayne rides for himself. When he won the Oscar, even his Hollywood rivals gave him a standing ovation. The film made $14.5 million on a $4.5 million budget. The Duke carried his Oscar statue with him for weeks after winning, occasionally pulling it out at restaurants to settle arguments. Wayne's physical condition during filming was worse than most people realized. Besides missing a lung, he was suffering from emphysema and heart problems that left him gasping for breath between takes. The costume department had to design special lightweight guns because standard props exhausted him. Yet, on camera, he shows zero weakness. His relationship with co-star Kim Darby was notoriously difficult. He wanted her replaced, complaining she wasn't feminine enough. She stood her ground, refusing to be intimidated. Their off-screen tension translated into perfect chemistry. The famous scene where Wayne jumps his horse over a fence was considered too dangerous for his health. The studio actually tried to get an injunction to stop him from performing it. Wayne showed up at 5 a.m. before lawyers arrived and shot the sequence anyway. The film's success spawned a sequel, and eventually the Coen brothers' remake, but neither captured what made the original special. Wayne, knowing this role might be his last significant one, pouring everything he had into it. His acceptance speech at the Oscars was famously brief. "If I'd known this was all it would take, I'd have put that eye patch on 40 years ago." Behind the joke was the painful truth that Hollywood had overlooked his best work for decades, finally giving him a statue when his career was nearly finished. The man who shot Liberty Valance. Ford stripped away everything that made Westerns glamorous and delivered a brutal lesson about American mythology. Shot in stark black and white when color was standard, using obvious studio sets instead of Monument Valley, the film deliberately feels fake. That's the whole point. The famous line, "When the legend becomes fact, print the legend," wasn't just dialogue. It was Ford's verdict on Wayne's entire career. The studio hated it. Paramount executives complained it looked cheap. It was. Ford shot it for under $1.5 million, cutting every corner possible. Wayne and James Stewart were both cast against type. Stewart, the idealist, plays a broken man. Wayne, the hero, plays someone whose life was built on a lie. Critics were confused, but the film still made over $8 million. Lee Marvin, who played the villain Liberty Valance, later said, "This wasn't a Western. This was Ford's funeral for the whole genre." The film's cynicism shocked audiences in 1962, but now it feels prophetic. Ford was drinking heavily during production, sometimes passing out between setups. He'd become disillusioned with Hollywood and America itself. The film's central message, that civilization is built on necessary lies, was his final statement on the Western myths he'd spent his career creating. Wayne understood this immediately. In one key scene, his character watches Stewart take credit for killing Liberty Valance, knowing the truth but accepting the lie. Wayne played this moment with such quiet dignity that Ford, who rarely complimented actors, stopped filming to applaud. The film was a direct response to the changing political landscape of early 1960s America. Kennedy had just been elected on a platform of idealism that Ford deeply mistrusted. The studio expected another heroic Western. Ford delivered a philosophical meditation on truth versus mythology. When Wayne first read the script, he reportedly said, "Jesus, this isn't a Western. This is about the death of the West." That's exactly what it was. Every character represents a different response to progress. Stewart embraces it, Marvin fights it, and Wayne sacrifices himself for it, while knowing it will erase men like him from history. The film's brilliant, bitter insight is that America needs its myths even when they're lies. No other Western has ever cut so deep into the American psyche. The quiet man. Wayne trading punches for kisses wasn't something audiences expected. This romantic comedy was his biggest departure ever. He plays Sean Thornton, an American boxer who returns to his Irish hometown and falls for fiery Maureen O'Hara. Their chemistry was legendary. O'Hara once said, "On screen, I fought him. Off screen, we fought worse." The famous 9-minute fight scene between Wayne and Victor McLaglen took 4 weeks to shoot, and the actors actually connected most punches. Republic Pictures refused to fund it. "Nobody wants to see the Duke in a love story," they said. Ford and Wayne mortgaged their homes to raise the $1.75 million budget. The gamble paid off. The film earned $3.8 million and won Ford his 4th directing Oscar. Ireland initially banned the film for promoting dangerous stereotypes. When they finally allowed screenings, it broke every box office record in the country. Wayne later said, "For once I got to play a person, not a Western archetype." The production itself became Irish legend. The entire village of Cong transformed to accommodate the crew. Electricity had to be brought to the region specifically for filming. Locals were hired as extras, with Ford insisting on authentic accents rather than Hollywood's usual fake Irish brogue. O'Hara performed one of cinema's most impressive physical feats. The sequence where she runs through fields and streams was shot in one continuous take, with her sprinting over half a mile without stopping or complaining that the water was freezing cold. The film's famous whispered line, where Wayne tells O'Hara something that makes her blush deeply, remains one of cinema's great mysteries. Ford had Wayne actually whisper something shocking to get a genuine reaction. O'Hara refused to reveal what was said until shortly before her death in 2015, when she admitted Wayne had whispered, "Your bottom is so big, I could stand a drink on it." Their playful, combative relationship extended off-screen. During the intense kissing scene where wind blows through the cottage door, O'Hara's hair repeatedly got caught in Wayne's watch. After multiple painful takes, she finally snapped, "For God's sake, Duke, take the damn thing off." He did, and they got the perfect take. The quiet man proved Wayne could convey tenderness as effectively as toughness, expanding his range beyond what anyone thought possible. Rio Bravo. Howard Hawks made this film as a direct response to High Noon, which he called un-American because the hero begs for help. Instead, he gave Wayne a character who refuses assistance, even when hopelessly outnumbered. The film invented the modern action movie formula, a small team of specialists facing impossible odds. Every assemble the team scene in action movies references this one. shot for $1.25 million, it earned back over $5.5 million. Dean Martin took a massive pay cut just to work with Wayne, and Hawks intentionally scheduled all of Martin's scenes early in the morning to keep him sober. The studio wanted the film to be shorter, but Hawks refused to cut a single frame. When execs complained about the slow pace, Hawks snapped back, "I'm not making this for today's audience. I'm making it for the next 50 years." Quentin Tarantino has said he watches this film before starting work on any new project. The film's revolutionary structure rejects typical Western pacing. Characters talk, sing, joke, and bond for long stretches between action sequences. Hawks believed tension builds through relationships, not just gunfights. Wayne's sheriff spends most of the film injured and limping, showing vulnerability rarely seen in his characters. His scenes with Angie Dickinson were controversial for their age gap. She was 27, he was 51, but their chemistry jumps off the screen. Hawks deliberately cast singer Ricky Nelson to attract teenage audiences, a marketing ploy that worked spectacularly. Behind the scenes, Martin's drinking nearly derailed production multiple times. During one key scene, he was so hungover that Wayne improvised the line, "You look like you slept in your clothes," because he actually had. The film's confined setting, mostly inside a small jail, was originally a budget-saving measure that became its greatest strength. The claustrophobic atmosphere heightens every interaction. The legendary dynamite scene, where Wayne throws explosives at attacking villains, required 14 takes, with real dynamite being used at Wayne's insistence. The film's famous musical interlude, where Martin and Nelson sing while Walter Brennan dances, was widely mocked by critics but has become one of its most beloved sequences. Rio Bravo doesn't just entertain, it redefined what action movies could be, creating a template still followed by filmmakers today. The Shootist. Wayne's final film feels like his own eulogy. He plays J.B. Brooks, an aging gunfighter dying of cancer, just as Wayne himself was at the time. The opening montage uses actual footage from Wayne's earlier westerns to establish the character's backstory. Most of the crew had worked with Wayne for decades, and many broke down during filming. When Brooks says, "I'm a dying man scared of the dark," Wayne wasn't acting. The studio begged him not to take the role. "The Duke can't die on screen," they argued, but Wayne insisted, "I need to say goodbye properly." The film barely broke even, earning just $6 million on a $6 million budget, but critics called it his finest performance. Wayne was so weak during production that some scenes required him to rest between individual lines of dialogue. The original script called for Brooks to be shot in the back, but Wayne refused. "That's not how Duke Wayne dies," he said. Wayne's physical condition was so poor that insurance companies initially refused to cover him. The production had to be structured around his limited stamina, rarely filming more than 4 hours per day. Director Don Siegel, known for tough action films like Dirty Harry, showed unexpected tenderness, often calling cut when he saw Wayne struggling, even if the take was going well. The supporting cast, James Stewart, Lauren Bacall, Ron Howard, Harry Morgan, was deliberately assembled from Hollywood legends as a tribute to Wayne's career. Bacall, who had previously worked with Wayne on Blood Alley, became his on-set protector, fiercely guarding his dignity when his strength failed. The film's most haunting scene shows Brooks meticulously cleaning his guns one last time. Wayne performed this without dialogue, his weathered hands telling the entire story. The sequence wasn't in the original script. Wayne suggested it, saying, "This is how a professional prepares." His final shootout was filmed in just 2 takes because that's all he could manage. When Brooks makes his last stand in the film, the entire crew watched in silence, knowing they were witnessing the end of an era. Wayne died 3 years later from the same cancer that kills his character. The Shootist stands as the perfect conclusion to his career, a meditation on mortality, legacy, and facing the end with dignity. No Hollywood star has ever crafted such a powerful final chapter to their own story. The Alamo. Wayne mortgaged everything he owned to make this film. Not just his house, but his cars, investments, even his boats. "I was $1.5 million in the hole before we shot a single frame," he admitted later. As both director and star, Wayne's passion project about Texas independence became the most expensive independent film ever made at that time, costing over $12 million. The Alamo set was the largest ever built, a full-scale replica that took 2 years to construct in Brackettville, Texas. Wayne was so determined to make it historically accurate that he hired 400 researchers. When the film ran long at 202 minutes, United Artists demanded cuts. Wayne refused until bankers threatened to seize his assets. He eventually cut 30 minutes, but the film still barely earned back its enormous budget. Critics savaged it, but Wayne never apologized. It wasn't about making money. It was about making Americans remember what courage looks like. Wayne's obsession with the Alamo went beyond filmmaking. It was his personal political statement. At the height of the Cold War, he saw the story as a parallel to America's stand against communism. He even delayed production to tour military bases promoting the project. The shoot itself was chaotic. Wayne struggled to balance directing and acting, often working 20-hour days. Temperatures regularly topped 110 degrees, causing dozens of extras to collapse from heat exhaustion. A flash flood destroyed parts of the set twice. Richard Widmark, playing Jim Bowie, hated the script so much he tried to quit. Wayne physically blocked his car from leaving. The battle sequences employed over 7,000 extras and used real black powder explosives that caused several serious injuries. Wayne himself was nearly killed when a cannon misfired. The film's failure to win major awards devastated him. He had poured everything, financially and emotionally, into the project. When criticized for historical inaccuracies, Wayne fired back, "It's not the way it was, it's the way it should have been." Despite mixed reviews, the Alamo has grown in stature over time. It represents something rare in Hollywood, a deeply personal vision brought to life through sheer force of will. The massive set became a tourist attraction that lasted decades longer than the film's theatrical run, eventually generating more revenue as a destination than the movie itself ever did. Sands of Iwo Jima. This film turned Wayne from a movie star into an American icon. As the tough Sergeant Stryker, Wayne embodied the greatest generation's sacrifice. Several actual Iwo Jima veterans served as extras, and Wayne insisted on using live ammunition for some battle sequences. "I want the men to flinch realistically when bullets hit near them," he explained. The studio's insurance company nearly shut down production when they found out. The film earned $3.4 million on a modest $1 million budget and scored Wayne his first Oscar nomination. What most people don't know is that Wayne never served in World War II. This caused him enormous guilt, and he poured that shame into his performance. Several veterans who worked on the film later said they couldn't believe Wayne hadn't seen combat based on how he portrayed Stryker. Years later, Wayne said, "They gave me a medal for acting like all those brave men who actually fought. That never sat right with me." The production featured unprecedented military cooperation, with the Marine Corps providing equipment, personnel, and access to Camp Pendleton for filming. The famous flag-raising scene used the actual survivors from the original Iwo Jima photograph as technical advisors. The film's battle sequences were so realistic that some theaters posted warnings for veterans suffering from what would now be recognized as PTSD. Wayne's performance walks a perfect line. Stryker is tough, but not inhuman, demanding but not cruel. He creates a character that veterans recognized as authentic. Wayne's guilt over not serving manifested in surprising ways during filming. He memorized the name of every veteran working as an extra and would eat meals with them, rather than in his trailer. When one former Marine broke down during a particularly realistic battle scene, Wayne personally escorted him off set and spent hours talking with him. The film's most powerful scene, Stryker's death, was almost cut by nervous executives who feared audiences wouldn't accept Wayne dying. Director Alan Dwan fought to keep it, arguing the sacrifice made the character more heroic, not less. Sands of Iwo Jima transcended typical war films by showing the psychological cost of combat alongside the physical danger. It remains the definitive cinematic portrayal of the Pacific Campaign and cemented Wayne's status as Hollywood's embodiment of American military virtue. Ironically, for a man who never actually served, El Dorado. Hawks basically remade Rio Bravo, and nobody complained. This time, Wayne plays a gunfighter, helping a drunk sheriff defend his town. It's essentially the same story, but Wayne brings something new, physical vulnerability. At 59, he moves slower, takes more hits, and even uses a crutch through most of the film. This aging, damaged version of his usual character felt revolutionary to audiences. The production faced constant trouble. Robert Mitchum's heavy drinking delayed numerous scenes. James Caan, in one of his first major roles, kept forgetting his lines when intimidated by Wayne. And Wayne himself was suffering from torn ligaments in his shoulder that made drawing his gun extremely painful. None of it shows on screen. The film cost $4.6 million, but earned over $12 million, proving that audiences would accept Wayne evolving beyond his usual invincible persona. Hawks later said, "I made the same movie 3 times, and each one made more money than the last. Why change what works?" The film's famous walking wounded theme wasn't originally in the script. It developed after Wayne injured himself in a fall during filming. Rather than delay production, Hawks incorporated the injury into the character, giving Wayne a crutch and rewriting scenes to show his limitations. This happy accident created the film's most distinctive element: heroes who keep fighting despite their broken bodies. Mitchum initially refused the role, telling Hawks, "I already saw Rio Bravo and liked it the first time." Hawks convinced him by promising to highlight the sheriff's alcoholism recovery, giving Mitchum his most nuanced character in years. The on-set dynamic between Wayne and Mitchum became legendary in Hollywood. Both were known for their one-take approach and minimal preparation. Crew members reported they would glance at the script moments before filming, then deliver perfect performances. Their mutual respect translated into exceptional on-screen chemistry. Wayne later called Mitchum the best actor in Hollywood. The film's stunning Technicolor photography of old Tucson locations gives it a dreamlike quality different from Hawks's earlier westerns. Cinematographer Harold Rossin, who had shot The Wizard of Oz decades earlier, created a visual palette that feels simultaneously realistic and mythic. El Dorado represents Wayne's transition into his final career phase, acknowledging his age and limitations while retaining his essential heroism. It's a masterclass in how a star can evolve rather than fade as time catches up with them. The Cowboys. The studio thought it was career suicide. Wayne surrounded himself with child actors in a brutal coming-of-age western where his character dies halfway through. Executives panicked, but Wayne insisted, "I'm tired of being immortal." Critics were stunned by the film's violence and Wayne's willingness to pass the torch to the next generation. Bruce Dern, who plays the villain who kills Wayne, received death threats for years afterwards. Director Mark Rydell, who openly opposed Wayne's conservative politics, expected constant conflict. Instead, Wayne told him, "I don't have to agree with a man to work with him." The film cost $6 million and earned back $7.5 million. Modest success, but not the disaster many predicted. Wayne later called it one of his favorites. The young actors were put through a real-life cowboy boot camp for 2 months before filming, learning to ride, rope, and herd cattle. When Wayne first saw them actually driving cattle, he reportedly got emotional and said, "These aren't actors anymore, they're cowboys." Wayne's death scene was revolutionary for its brutality. Shot in slow motion with multiple cameras, it shows him being gunned down without heroics or last words. Audiences were traumatized, women screamed in theaters, and some viewers walked out in protest. The studio begged Wayne to reconsider, arguing his fans expected him to triumph. His response, "Sometimes the bad guys win." The film's uncompromising approach extended to its treatment of the young cast. They performed nearly all their own stunts, including dangerous river crossings and nighttime stampede sequences. Several were injured during production. Dern's portrayal of the sadistic villain, Long Hair, made him temporarily unhireable in westerns. "I became the man who killed John Wayne," he later recalled. "That wasn't good for my career." The film's composer, John Williams, created one of his earliest memorable scores, establishing themes that would influence his later work on Star Wars. Wayne's performance shows remarkable restraint. He creates a mentor figure who's tough but fair, teaching lessons through actions rather than speeches. The Cowboys ultimately represents Wayne's acknowledgement that his era was ending. By allowing his character to die so the next generation could continue, he created a powerful metaphor for his own legacy. It stands as one of the most thematically rich westerns ever made, confronting mortality and mentorship with unflinching honesty. Hondo. This might be the most technically influential film Wayne ever made. Shot in 3D during the first big 3D craze of the 1950s, it pioneered techniques still used today. Wayne insisted the 3D enhance the storytelling, rather than just provide gimmicky effects. As a cavalry rider who becomes protector to a woman and her son living in Apache territory, Wayne delivered one of his most nuanced performances. The film was based on a Louis L'Amour story, and L'Amour later expanded it into a novel because he was so impressed by Wayne's interpretation. Shot for $1.25 million, it earned $4.1 million and received critical praise, particularly for the respectful portrayal of Apache culture. Wayne insisted on hiring actual Apache consultants rather than rely on Hollywood stereotypes. When the 3D version was thought lost for decades, film historians called it a tragedy. The 3D negative was rediscovered in the 1990s and restored. James Edward Grant's screenplay was so good that Wayne kept a copy of it in his home for the rest of his life, occasionally rereading favorite scenes. The film's 3D photography required innovative solutions. Traditional 3D cameras were too bulky for location shooting in Mexico's rugged Camargo region. Cinematographer Archie Stout and director John Farrow developed new lightweight rigs that could be mounted on horses and carried through difficult terrain. Their techniques would influence 3D filmmaking for decades. Wayne performed all his riding stunts himself, including the dangerous scene where Hondo jumps from a cliff into a river while escaping Apache pursuers. His insistence on realism extended to language. He learned basic Apache phrases from his consultants rather than fake them. Geraldine Page, in her film debut, received an Oscar nomination for her performance as the isolated frontierswoman. Her naturalistic acting style contrasted with Wayne's more straightforward approach, creating an on-screen dynamic that feels remarkably modern. The film's treatment of interracial relationships was ahead of its time. Hondo's revelation that he lived with the Apache and married a native woman was shocking for 1953 audiences. Even more progressive was the film's refusal to demonize either side in the Apache settler conflict. Wayne's character straddles both worlds, understanding and respecting each perspective. Hondo remains remarkable for avoiding the simplistic Cowboys versus Indians narrative common in 1950s westerns. Instead, it presents a nuanced view of frontier life where survival depends on mutual respect and cultural adaptation. The film demonstrates Wayne's willingness to embrace complexity when most of his contemporaries settled for stereotypes. Which John Wayne film hit you the hardest? Was he truly the greatest American icon, or just a carefully constructed studio product? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and ask yourself this. Could any actor today survive playing the same character for 50 years and still keep audiences coming back? The Duke didn't just make westerns, he built an entire vision of America, one that's still fighting for its life today.